Hey guys, Marsingin here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so tomorrow we have the release of our next Super EZA, the third physical unit to get a Super EZA. Still waiting on an int unit of some variety to get one, but we're getting our third physical unit. But it's interesting that it is full power Frieza, and obviously Broly was the previous one, because they have been doing Super EZAs that make sense with the theme of the celebration, but at the same time they have also kind of gone back to doing the earliest Dokkan Fest, right? Super Saiyan 3 Goku was the first Super EZA, and he was the first EZA. He was one of the first Dokkan Fest exclusives in the game, and he released in the same sort of meta, the same leader skills as STR Legendary Super Saiyan Broly and this full power Frieza. So when Goku was announced as the first Super EZA, a lot of people thought that this guy or Broly or Texel, I forget who the int one is, would get their EZA next, or Super EZA next. And then of course they went off in a completely different direction, did ones that fit the theme of the celebration, which I do think is a much better option. But it's just kind of funny that because of the themes of the celebrations that we've had, we have cycled back around to Broly and then Frieza. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if we do actually get like a Cell themed Dokkan Fest sometime soon, or Super Saiyan 2 Gohan versus Cell, and then they drop the Texel Super EZA. But let me know what you guys think down below. Remind me who the int one was from the same meta. I've completely forgotten off the top of my head. Is it int Ultimate Gohan? It might be. I can't remember. Someone let me know in the comments. But these EZAs are coming out tomorrow. They will be coming out at 6 AM UK time, which was the same time the Vegeta banner released, an hour and a half earlier than global events and banners usually release. There is talk of obviously the fact that this could be the new time going forward that all this stuff releases. It's interesting because with the sync, I very much suspected that they were going to start dropping all the global stuff at the same time as JP, which means stuff would have been coming out an hour and a half later for global, which would have been great for me in the UK time, meaning I could get up a little bit later for new content releases. But it seems like instead they're releasing stuff earlier, which means not only is it earlier on global, it's also much earlier on JP. So let me know your thoughts about the seemingly new release time schedule as well down below. But physical full power Frieza is coming out as the Super EZA. Obviously remember that Super EZAs don't update leader skills or super attacks, so his leader skill, not really much worth discussing. I guess you could, still use him in Battlefield or something. His super attack, though, interestingly enough, is he does actually have a somewhat decent effect on his super, because he does immense damage, but he raises defense by 30% for 3 turns, which means if he's on rotation, he has that 30% buff when he comes back around the next time. Whereas obviously if you float him off, he won't come back for 4 turns and then he won't have that buff, which is interesting because when we take a look at his passive, so his Super Z Awakened passive, this is obviously where they have to do all the heavy lifting with the Super EZA, because this is the only thing that actually changes. Key 3, attack 150%, attack 300%, and defense 150% when performing a super. So big attack numbers already, you can see. Defense 150 when performing a super is interesting, but no real start of turn defense. So whilst it is a big multiplier, it's going to be going off of a number that's not going to be particularly big, potentially. We'll see as we go. Reduce damage received by 50%, starting from the 5th turn from the character's entry turn, damage reduction rate -10, with each turn passed no more than -30. So starting from his 5th turn, he starts to lose 10% damage reduction, but it won't go any lower. He'll still have 20% damage reduction once it's like fully worn down, which is not great. Like 20% isn't a lot, unless you're a unit that's backing it up with really high raw defense and like guard or something like that, right? 20% is not a huge amount when you think about some of the big damage super attacks, how much damage they do and how much HP our teams actually have. But then he does get an extra 150% defense and damage reduction of 30% as the first attacker in the turn. So that means before those 5 turns, when it starts to wear off, it means he'll have 80% damage reduction in slot 1. The only problem, of course, is he'll get this 150%, I guess, but he's getting a lot of his defense on super. So 80% damage reduction in slot 1 might sound really good, but with low raw defense to back it up, it means if we're putting him in slot 1 and we're getting some of these big bosses super in slot 1 straight away, it's still going to do a lot of damage to him. So he also gets an additional attack and defense 150% when performing a super as the second or third attacker in the turn. He launches an additional super attack if HP is 50% or more when attacking. If HP is 50% or less when attacking, he gets a guaranteed crit when attacking superclass enemies, and attacks effective against all types when attacking extreme enemies. And then he gets an additional 12 ki and 150% attack when there is a pure Saiyans category enemy. So the thing with this guy, I think ideally you want him in slot 2. If you're keeping him on rotation, right, you want him in slot 2. He's not going to get the extra damage reduction, but he gets an extra 150% on super, which means his on super defense buff is like 300%. And then he is raising defense on super as well. So that gets him up to a relatively decent amount, and then he'll have 50% damage reduction. I don't think he's going to work as a slot 1 unit, like I say, against these tougher bosses, because 80% damage reduction is nice, but he just doesn't have enough defense to back it up. And then of course he gets a guaranteed additional super if you're at 50% or more HP, which obviously if we're talking like turn 1, it is when attacking though, so obviously that means it can activate mid-turn. So if your slot 1 unit gets hit with a big super and you lose a bunch of HP, when this guy attacks you'll be at the 50% or less potentially, and then he gets guaranteed crits or effective against all types depending on the event. And then of course if we are taking him into any of the blue zone stages or anything where we're fighting a pure Saiyan enemy, the 12 ki is funny because it means even on no leader skill he's like guarantee supering, which is funny, but he gets an extra 150% attack. So I'm imagining in his best case scenario this guy should hit quite hard, but I don't think his defense is going to be anything too crazy. And when we think about Frieza and some of the teams for him, like I'm thinking of like the AGL pod Frieza, his team definitely needs like good slot 1 tanks, and I don't think this guy really fills that role. You could throw him onto some of the teams that he fits on as like a third slot floating unit that just does a big super attack in slot 3 and then like floats off. But obviously, as I said at the beginning, he won't keep his 3-turn stack from his defense on his super attack effect, which is annoying. Yeah, this guy strikes me as being a little bit underwhelming compared to, and bear in mind, I know the worldwide celebration is a big celebration, regardless of how people feel about how this one went. And then we're now into like a filler Dokkan Fest celebration, but I feel like Super EZAs should still be on a similar sort of level, right? Regardless of which celebration they release in. And you know, when I read STR Broly's kit, it's like, oh, okay, this guy like is potentially the best like Super EZA now. Whereas this guy, I don't get that feeling just from reading his passive. I do value like the support and stuff from Kid Buu. I did think Kid Buu was the best until Broly came out. So I would say this guy is probably not even better than Kid Buu. Obviously he's going to do a lot more damage, but I'll have to wait and see what he's like in game to see how good he is defensively. But yeah, this is the Super EZA Frieza, comes out tomorrow. Now there are missions, of course, so we got beat the stage with at least 3 EZA characters. This is common for a Super EZA thing to get some of the extra medals. Beat the Super EZA with at least 3 transformation boost characters. I mean, they really couldn't have picked like an easier category mission, right? Transformation boost is a huge category with tons of strong STR characters, so this one's pretty straightforward. And then the last one is win within 6 minutes and 30 seconds, which I think is a much longer time allowance than the Broly one was, so this shouldn't be too difficult. And this gives you 15 extra medals if you do all the missions. Remember, you need 30 to Super EZA the character, and you get 3 every time you beat the stage. So as long as you can get this done within the first like 5 attempts, you only need 5 attempts and then you've got all the medals. So those are going to be nice and straightforward. And then of course we do have the 2 sub EZAs to talk about as well. We have the STR Goku. This guy EZAs with medals from the full power Frieza EZA. Both him and Nail are sub EZAs, so you need to grind their medals by replaying the stages 4 stamina. So bear in mind that that is something that you can do now. I know the full power Frieza one is up now. I'm not sure if the Piccolo one is up for now or if you have to use the Portal of Memories and use the keys, but these are available now. So if you've got nothing else to do in the game today, you can pre-farm these medals so that as soon as the EZAs go live tomorrow, you can just awaken them and then start messing around with them. But this Goku, I've seen a very mixed bag of like responses to him, and I feel like he is going to be a really weird unit where, like, if you get the run where you get the right RNG and you see him do like his full potential, he could be quite interesting. But any runs where that doesn't happen, he's just going to look really mid, I think. So he massively raises attack for 1 turn, does supreme damage, so it's a big attack raise, which is good. Key 3, attack and defense 200%, survives KO attacks once within a turn. If HP is 59% or less when receiving an attack, he gets an additional 200% attack and defense, and attacks effective against all types starting from that turn. So that's then forever. So if he receives an attack when you're at 59% or less HP, he gets that massive buff and effective against all types for the rest of the fight. If HP is 20% or less when receiving an attack, he evades enemies' attacks, including supers, within the turn, once only, plus an additional attack and defense 100%, and launch an additional super attack starting from that turn. Recovers 59% HP if HP is 20% or less at the end of the turn. So the way I read this, which could be really good if you can get him into that situation, is if he survives a KO attack, like let's say he gets supered by one of these bigger bosses, he's going to take loads of damage, but he's going to remain on 1 HP. Then if he's getting another attack, the reason why the survive KO mechanic has never really been that crazy is because regardless of how high your base defense, damage reduction, guard, any of that kind of stuff, you can't take 0 damage in this game unless you're negating or countering, right? So what would happen is you'd survive a KO attack, then you just get hit again, and even if you got hit for double-digit damage, you would die because you're on 1 HP. So the way this reads is you get hit, you drop to 1 HP, but then it says if HP is 20% or less when receiving an attack, you then get guaranteed dodge for the turn. So that should read as that attack that would then kill you when you're on 1 HP, it activates like before that attack hits you, so you just dodge it, and then you dodge the rest of the attacks for the turn so he doesn't die, and then you get all the permanent buffs, because obviously if you're getting the 20% or less one, you're also getting the 59% or less one. So then he's getting 300% extra attack and defense, a guaranteed additional super, and he's effective against all types. And then of course at the end of that turn, he's dodged the attacks, you're on 1 HP, but then you recover 59% HP. That's the way it should work, right? Like with the Tech Vegeta, when he receives the attack, that he gets the defense buff. It's not like the old style where he has to get hit first, then he gets a defense buff, then you get hit after that. Because if this does work like the older style, then you would still just die. If you survive a KO attack and then are getting attacked again, he would just die. So this should activate when the follow-up attack is coming, and then you'd live because you get guaranteed dodge for that turn. If you can get into that situation with this guy super early on, that could be really interesting. Like, for example, I know the event itself is not the hardest, but like we've got the new Family Kamehameha Gohan event where you fight Videl, Goten and Trunks in the first phase. They have a pretty decent amount of attacks, but Videl always super attacks in slot 1. So if you go into that event and this guy's on the first turn, you could just put him in slot 1. She's going to super attack him guaranteed. Chances are you are probably going to get to the point where you're almost dead, and then he activates the dodge, survives the turn. Now the only problem with that, of course, if you're putting him in slot 1, is he doesn't get the heal until the end of the turn, which means if you do drop to 1 HP, you still got your other 2 units on the rotation that are then going to get hit for double digits and you still die. So it's probably not actually the most effective strategy, unfortunately. But if you can pull this off and get these to activate, especially early on, I feel like this guy could look really good. But the other problem is, like I said at the beginning of this little segment for this guy, if you do use him in a tough event and you can't get these to proc, not only is he not going to be doing a lot of damage, he's just going to be a liability for the team, right? Until you can get him to take that big hit. And then you've kind of got to hope that, I guess, he's in slot 3. Because if the heal was instant, then that would be really good. But yeah, he'll survive the follow-up attacks if he drops to 1 HP. But the other units on the team can still get hit. So that's pretty awkward. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the Goku. I think he could be very hit or miss. It's going to be very RNG dependent. And then we have the AGL Nail. This is one that people have been waiting for quite some time. This guy was pretty decent on release and managed to age relatively well because he had like damage reduction and stuff. So he greatly raises attack and defense on super. Attack and defense 150, gets an additional attack that has a great chance to become a super. Additional attack and defense 150 for 3 turns from the entry turn. So big stats for 3 turns. Additional attack and defense 150 and reduced damage received by 30% to 77%. The less HP, the greater the reduction when there is another Namekian ally on the team. So the lower your HP, the more damage reduction he has. And then he gives all allies 2 ki and 50% attack and defense when there's an ally whose name includes Piccolo on the team. So both the Namekian ally and the Piccolo just have to be on the team. And then he launches an additional super attack and gets guaranteed crits when there's a Wicked Bloodline or Planet Namek Saga enemy. So they added the Namek Saga enemy thing, which I think is good. The interesting thing, I talked about this yesterday in the video for like who will the part 2 LR be. I feel like they have to release a new Namek Saga Piccolo, right? Because like, who do you run this guy with? Like the best Piccolo in the game currently is probably still the Tech LR. They're only on Connected Hope together. It's the only category they share. So if you wanted to use, well, and obviously Namekians, but that's not really a team. So if you want to use them on the Namek Saga team, like there's the Tech Piccolo banner unit from the Namek Goku Worldwide, but he's terrible. He wasn't even good on release. And then there's not really exactly you're not, you know, have spoilt for choice for a different Namekian ally, because if you don't have a Piccolo, you're just losing out on the support, which is nice to have, but it doesn't affect Nail's performance specifically. But he doesn't get the extra 150% attack and defense or damage reduction if you don't have another Namekian on the team. So one of the things we talked about yesterday was a part 2 LR being a Piccolo, or like Nail that exchanges into Piccolo or something like that. Because otherwise, like, it's cool that this guy's getting his EZA now, but it just doesn't feel like he really fits in anywhere, because he's not going to be on any current teams like with Piccolo, which is with a relevant Piccolo, which I think is very odd. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I mean, this guy just seems very good, having damage reduction. Obviously, if we're on 4 HP, he only has 30%, which isn't a huge amount, but he's got very high stats for the first 3 turns. He's greatly raising defense on super, so he should be relatively good defensively after supering, especially in those first couple of turns. But you do need a Piccolo for the support. You need a Namekian for the damage reduction, which, again, let's be fair, we're still just talking about a Piccolo, right? Because what other Namekian character, realistically, are you going to be running? And this guy, he's a sub EZA from the physical Piccolo EZA. So again, his medals are available now. You can go farm those and have those ready for when he EZAs at 6 AM UK time tomorrow. So let me know what you guys think of the sub EZAs and the full power Frieza super EZA. Like I say, all of these guys seem like they're quite interesting, but none of them seem like crazy top tier. Maybe I am underestimating full power Frieza, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.